Hi, Elton. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Cool. Awesome.
Alright, so actually a few days back we did a live IG session on what employers are looking for in fresh grads. And
Yes.
yeah, so we have a few questions that we streamlined a few questions that people has been asking, and we just like to have more clarification and just go more in depth towards those kind of things.
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah, it was a good session. It was a really good session. A lot of interactivity. So I really thank everyone for attending that.
It's a really good session. A lot of people get to ask their questions and fill in the blanks of things that we probably don't know. Yeah. Okay. So the first question that came up during that thing is, when you apply for startups, difference between applying for startups and big corporations. What should we expect for when we apply for different like startups and big corporations?
All right, so that's a really good question because end of the day, whether you're starting with a big corporation or with a startup, it really doesn't matter because it's really what you feel passionate about. Where do you find you want to start your career, and also where do you think that you will love to start more. So I've had friends who started with big corporations and they are now with startups and vice versa. So to me, the advice is there's no wrong or right answer. It's more on what would they be offering you and what do you think that you can offer to those companies that you would like to start your career with.
Alright. But they say there's a difference between a startup culture and this big company especially when they're hiring. There's there's this misconception. I don't know whether it's a misconception, but when you go for a startups company, you tend to do everything, and when you go for big companies, usually you get more specified job. You don't learn something so broad. You don't learn many aspects, but more of you stick to the job that you're supposed to do. Is that really the case?
Okay, there is a difference because even within big organizations and big corporations, depending on the industry, they tend to look at things very differently. So if you are applying or if you are seeking a job in somewhere more structured like in the finance organizations or in legal, etc., of course there is different competencies that you need to achieve before you reach to the next level. So there's more governance in those type of organizations. However, a lot of big corporations are also more intrapreneurial, meaning that within the organization there is a startup-like culture as well. They drive values like passion, empowerment, accountability, and self-drivenness, so that you can decide and decide the scope and the boundaries that you work with. Of course, the typical startup is where you would probably be exposed to end-to-end sort of processes and work scope. But of course, within the startup as well, you will have the owner of the startup or the entrepreneur themselves, having his own governance, his or her own governance in certain critical processes like decision making, etc. Hence, having said that, right, there are also startups whereby the owners and the founders themselves are very liberal and provide a lot of space for empowerment across different levels of employees. And so, I would really advise, if you are seeking for different sort of companies, to really understand how they work internally, what is their culture like, how are decisions made, how are projects given out. So these are the questions you can ask potential employers or potential places or organizations that you want to work with.
Alright, yeah. So it is down to what you want to learn and which aspect you look to get into when you start off your first job, right?
Correct. Because a lot of times job seekers, especially when you are younger, when at the end of the interview, normally the employers will say, do you have any questions, or the hiring manager will ask, do you have any questions for us before you leave? many interviewees will say, oh, no questions, I'm okay, I'm fine. But this is a great opportunity, and often missed opportunity,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
interviewees should ask, they should ask about the culture, they should ask about decision-making processes, they should ask about, their own boundaries or their own work scope that they will be, allocated for, or they would be appointed for.
Alright, yeah, yeah. So another thing is we touched on is how because to get into this interview sometimes you have to know the right people, and you need to know what the company is looking for in the new hirees. So is networking really that important when you're trying to get a new job?
Yes and no, okay, because there's no hard and fast rule there. But now in these days and age where LinkedIn is so accessible, everyone has a LinkedIn profile. Everyone has some form of network groups, whether it's on Facebook, closed groups on Facebook or Instagram, and other social media portals, right, and platforms. So companies are there, individuals are there, and it's easy for job seekers and easy for people who are interested in a certain organization to reach out to different individuals to understand the organization as well as the individual a little bit more. And don't forget, it works both ways, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So while the interviewee or the job seeker is also looking for information about the organization and the hiring manager or the future boss, they are also looking the other way with the interviewee.
Alright. That day during your workshop, you actually mentioned that you can actually hit up these people on LinkedIn to just ask, are your company hiring? What sort of position you're trying to fill, and what are you looking for in, let's say, any areas that you want to hire, and you can offer your services. Is that one way we can really, really approach it?
Yeah, definitely, because sometimes some organizations may not have open interviews for every position, right? And sometimes you may miss it, due to timing, or you don't know what's out there. So if you do have a certain vision of what your career would look like, which organizations you want to work for, what sort of job would you like, do some research first, right? Of the different aspects of it, the different availability, and go out there and just get in touch with them and say, hey, I'm particularly passionate about this project that I saw on LinkedIn that you posted on. How can I contribute? I did so and so with the past project, and I believe that even if you don't have a permanent position, I would love to intern for you for 2 or 3 months for the project. So in this day and age, it is coming to a blended sort of workforce economy. So it's no longer just employer and employee kind of relationship in the job market these days. So there's a lot of blended workforce that's going to happen in the future. Hence, I don't see why not people approach companies for work.
Alright. So moving on to the next question that we had that day, because since we talk about LinkedIn, so how important is social media, like your other platforms other than LinkedIn? Like we all use a lot of Instagram and Twitter, Facebook. So how important are the other social medias? Do these employers really, really go on? Because we have a lot of stuff that probably wouldn't want employers to see on those social media. So what are your thoughts on it?
Well, to me, my first philosophy is never post something that you wouldn't want your mother to see on social media, right? Because at the end of the day, it's there forever. You never know when it will come back out, right?
Even if it's private?
Even if it's private, because the 6 degrees of separation is now probably 3 degrees of separation, so someone will know somebody and somehow, somewhere. And with the amount of digital safety and security these days, of course, it is there. But we've seen one too many movies to know how it can leak out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, of course, employers will normally check out your LinkedIn, yeah, if they do have that sort of policy to look at their future employees.
Okay.
However, there are many, of course, though not done deliberately, they would actually just try to check you out on your other social media platforms, right?
It's like a casual getting to know.
Yeah, just getting to know, because the world is so complex nowadays. You never know when what would be different and future employees, different philosophies and
Yeah.
different sort of agendas. So the most importantly, of course, the intent of employers looking out for this kind of connections is to see one, culture fit. Secondly is probably even business acumen, to see whether this future employee would be a future talent and how to grow these talents, and
Alright.
and lastly, of course, is authenticity, because everything you can put down beautifully on paper, but in real life, are you really like that? So real life happens, on the so-called social media that you're out there, the so-called real life,
Yeah.
right? So that's how it can work both ways. So while employees have company review platforms, right, like Glassdoor, etc., they, employers look out on the other aspects this way.
Okay.
Mm.
Because that day you were talking about because we have an online persona. That day during the workshop you talked about having a resume persona. So another thing is, okay, one is social media, so we talk about your social media persona. Now for your resume persona, that day we had this question: should we do simple, complicated resumes, or design-based resumes? Because Canva has a lot of templates on how you do resumes, and what you hear outside, some of them say do it simple, then some of them say you have to put a lot of things into it. So what works for what, and how do you know which should you use when you go to your job interview?
Yeah. All right. So my first advice is tailor-made your resume. Whether it's simple or whether it's complicated, it depends on the job and the employer that you're looking for, that you're applying to, right? So if you're applying to a big fashion house, very creative sort of agency, then it should reflect that sort of persona on your resume. But if you're applying to a more serious, more conventional kind of companies, then you would want to structure your resume a bit differently. End of the day, the content of the resume is also important, right? So as I shared, right, there is only 6 seconds for employers to look at your resume. So first impressions do count, and technically they only go through 1/3 of your resume. So your first 1/3 of your resume, that's where it matters most. Hence, don't try to do one resume to fit 20,000 employers, but look at it by industry and look at it by which job scopes and also organizations that you're looking for. So for instance, if you're applying for a finance position in a creative agency, you got to find a bit of a balance between the creative part and the structured part.
Okay, so actually that day we also touched on mass application also, because you said curate your resumes, and actually few podcasts back we also talked about with another of our friend. He's just a fresh graduate on mass applications.
Yeah.
So why do you think such things exist when we are supposed to create like curated resumes for when we go out to the workforce for job applications?
I guess mass resumes is just to put yourself out there, to say that you are hunting for a job, but you're going to stretch yourself really thin, right? So what if you get 10 mediocre job offers, and how do you differentiate between the 10, right, versus you putting in your effort, tailoring your effort to 5 of your dream jobs and really going for it, right? So then from there, you can probably tailor-made, put in the effort, really go in deep into what you're trying to showcase to your future employer, rather than skimming the surface and not really getting anyone to bite.
So you get to show more heart into your resume.
Yeah.
Alright, it's like your Instagram profile.
Yeah.
You cannot simply just... Yeah.
Yeah, what do you look for? You look for something unique. You look for, similarly, you look for something that catches your eye. So, when employers go through mass, they go to job fairs, they receive hundreds of applications. How do you even differentiate them? And nowadays, it gets even more technical, because a lot of organizations have AI systems to look through resumes, right, to search for keywords, etc. So it's a bit like playing with the SEO, as well on Google and all that. You also need to understand keywords within your resume that AI will pick up.
You want to stand out there, right?
You want to be picked
okay.
up. Yeah, not even stand out. Yeah, you just want to be selected.
Actually, you spoke about AI. So with AI, how do they differentiate, let's say, your curated resumes that's different from the others? How do they know which is something that's like different?
Okay, so it's through keywords, right? So the different organizations, depending on the software that they are looking at. One very simple example is, if you go on LinkedIn, you search hashtags. So if you search hashtags, human resources, then what comes up? So if those words are not in your resume, then you don't come up, right? And which parts of your resume is it in? Is it in the first few descriptions? It's exactly like a social media platform.
Okay. Got it. Alright, one more thing actually, a lot of people have this, even I have this confusion. People tend to use interchangeably CV and resume.
Okay.
But I think there's a difference, right? There, CV and resume is not the same thing. Can you shed some light on that?
Okay, this is like an old technical differentiation. Even I use it interchangeably now. Resume is basically your one-pager snapshot of your career or whatever you're trying to sell, right? And your CV is actually your portfolio. So, the different jobs that you've done. So, if you've been in a project, if you were a project manager, you will have some photos of how the project is, if you're an artist or a designer, you will have some design work inside, some of the curated work that you've done before. So, a CV will just dictate, a resume will just dictate, the hard points that you've done before.
So basically, CV is a more detailed resume, if you put it in that sense.
Yeah, correct.
Because every time we're having this talk, so CV and resume, it seems like the same thing, yet actually it's different what people want.
Yes, correct.
From it. When they say resume and when they say CV, they actually want different things.
Yeah. But hey, you know what?
Yeah.
Ask. If you're not sure what they want, right? Is it a one-pager? Is it a two-pager? Because different companies will also look for different things. So sometimes, because in my past when I was doing recruitment, it really depends on the role. So if I'm looking for a finance person, I would just ask for a resume, brief. I want to know what are the achievements, the details there. But if I'm looking for a graphic designer, or I'm looking for a trainer, then I will ask for a CV and even for a portfolio, and say, hey, show me some of the programs that you've done before, or if you have a video of yourself. So that was me as an employer asking. But if you're not sure as a job seeker, you should ask.
Alright.
Yeah,
definitely. I think a lot of people, especially like us, we are scared to ask because we feel like people will think that we didn't do our preparation and they will look down on us. But you should ask to actually know what you need to put out there and what they're looking for, right?
Yes, correct. Hang on.
Yeah, sure.
Please, don't make noise. Mommy is doing something. Yeah, the dice is noisy. Can you go out? No need. Okay, my technical guy. Sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, it's alright. Working from home, right?
So okay, so
Yeah,
yeah, your
so
question again, yeah.
no, I was saying employers will actually appreciate that you come out and ask instead of just blindly assuming that uh, what they want is what you're gonna give.
Yeah, correct. I think where the more you ask questions gives you an opportunity to interact with the future employer. So once you start interacting, you sort of like build a little relationship even before the interview. Hence, the employer or whoever's hiring you or the interviewing manager the interviewer will know or will sort like, have a bit of inclination towards you as well, will understand you a little bit better comparatively to you being represented just on a printed paper.
Alright, alright. So before that's all the questions we had from the last session.
Okay, cool.
So actually, yeah. Before we end, just is there any advice, like really big advice that you can give to help us facilitate like a smoother process into getting jobs that we want, or just applying for jobs in general?
Okay, I think one is being prepared, right? Whether it's doing your CV, whether it's understanding yourself, whether it's going for interview or even getting dressed for the interview, preparedness does take some time. So do invest some time to prepare for the entire process, right? If you are not sure, research, talk to people, and there's tons of resources online to help you in your preparation stage. Secondly is, of course, asking questions and trying to build and bridge that gap with your future employer once you sort of like targeted who you want to go for. Use the social media, use whatever platforms you have, use whatever opportunities you have to create that distinction. For instance, even if the interviewer called you for a slot of interview time, right? Ask ask questions. So it sort of like prolongs and gives you more time in building that relationship. And I guess my third advice is be yourself, right? Being authentic to yourself will really come out and come through in the interview. Hence, what you say that you do on paper, will it really reflect you in person? So I've seen so many cases where they look really great on paper, but in real life, it could be a contradiction.
It is completely different.
Yeah, or vice versa. Like we see a resume that is like, we're not sure, but because when we call the person and then we took the initiative, or I took the initiative to call the person, then you have a bit of a sixth sense there's something deeper about this person. And true enough, it appeared when during the interview it was really a good experience, but the person did not manage to put that authenticity into paper. So both sides need to synchronize, whether it's on paper and yourself.
Alright. Actually, there's one thing I missed out actually. Because of this pandemic, the COVID-19, is there any big changes in employability and like what employers are looking? Will it change drastically?
Okay, so
like, is there going to be any change in the industry?
Okay,
in a sense,
yes and no, right? Because now the only thing certain is uncertainty, and employers are still
figuring out,
looking for that balance between the employees that they have and what would the future job seekers look like, what would future jobs be. But definitely, there will be these two different paradigms that exist at both ends of the spectrum. And technically how they are preparing for it now, it's a step-by-step process, meaning that more and more online interviews or more and more online CVs or online resumes will start coming up. More and more probably even assessment tools will be done online to gauge the future of potential employees. And at the same time, you will also have probably employers that are looking to shift certain workforce into the gig economy kind of workforce, right? So that and that in turn will change the employee or the giggers employability. So no longer you will get cheap freelancing jobs, but you will get freelancing at a professional level. So that would change, you know.
So, yeah.
Mm.
Alright, I guess that's all. Thank you so much for your time. Can you go take care of your kids now, right?
Okay, sorry for the video bombing. It's not even photo bomb now,
It's
okay? It's
okay.
video bombing.
Yeah, it's alright. I mean, they got to go somewhere, right?
I know. So that is also something that employers will also need to deal with, right? How employees or even working with employees with families on their end. So the lines between work and life is getting even more blurry. And you know, it's a matter of how all these things come together in the future. That will be interesting to see.
Yeah. We can look into that sometime after this, see how it moves.
Yeah,
Right?
thanks for having me. I mean, it's
No problem. Thank you
really
for
fun to be on board this.
Yeah. I mean, it's good for us to like just know what is out there because we are so confused, especially for us at this time. We're trying everything. So, yeah. Have a great day and I'll see you
Okay,
soon.
take care.
Yeah.
Bye.